There are so many problems with Shapesmith that nobody has spoken about. They just get worse and worse as I go on. It makes him the biggest traitor to Earth and to the Martians. When I saw him get torn in half by the other variant, I was in the air praising the Lord, thanking him for all his blessings and glory, until I saw that disgusting creature being put back together by the medics, knowing he would be alive and safe soon enough. Now, I know you may think this hate has no reason for being here, but trust me, there's plenty of reason to hate him. The first problem is so confusing because what is this alien doing in the most prestigious superhero squad in the world? Not once have I seen him save someone's life that matters in this massive universe. Ever since he got here, which caused a man to live the worst month of his life, by the way, almost caused a world invasion because of this Martian's greed. So originally he was a Martian living on Mars, where they all live peacefully, mind you. Like, imagine the Garden of Eden. He was there, it was good, but there was a space crew sent from Earth to explore Mars because they didn't know there was already life there. So it didn't end well for us, because the Martians don't really like people being there, and especially because the Sackwoids will try and take over, because the human skin is way too soft compared to the Martian skin, so they can easily take over. And this would take away all the humans' control of everything while they're mind controlled. They can't do nothing. So as the space crew are running for their lives to escape the Martians because they're not that friendly, on the way back, a member of the crew falls over. Thank God Shapesmith showed up to help him. What a nice guy. I sure hope he doesn't physically assault the man. So he traded lives with this man wanting to go to Earth. Now, this would have been alright having him on Earth, especially because the other Martian died from the hands of Omni-Man, so you'd hope that Shapesmith could replace him, especially because they had so many unique powers, such as shapeshifting, of course flight, manipulating his body, and being really strong. He wasn't that weak either. He was strong enough to hold down Omni-Man for a good bit, until he slipped up. But if he didn't do all this to Omni-Man, the fight could have gone very different. So you would be correct if you thought these two would share abilities, seeing that Shapesmith is practically studying Martian Man's life while living as the astronaut. Well, all this Joker does is transform and goof around. You may think I'm being rash, so let's look at his past fights and how horrible they all were. After not tricking NASA into believing he's the same guy, they kick him out because he was actually acting a bit too funky. Also, not being able to pay rent, he decides to join the Guardians, replacing Martian Man. He joins randomly while fighting the Lizard League. He kind of just jumps in as Rex, and his first moments in the fight were such a letdown. He just gets smoked. After being questioned, he shows his powers, saying that he's some human that caught up in a nuclear reactor. But the next fight will be different, right? You know, you'd think so. A little bit of training. In this fight, it's up against Skeletron, and it kind of just goes off screen. We don't see much of the fight at all. All we really see is him getting beat up for a subplot and transforming back to his Martian form. So it looks like people are onto Shapesmith seeing his true Martian identity, which shockingly just turned out to be a dumb joke. You can't get much past the GDA. The second problem annoyed me so much, because this is where Shapesmith should be needed the most. They tried to help some people out from Mars, which is all his fault, by the way, by boinking this guy on the head to take his place and go back to Earth. His greed sickens me. A lot of them end up on the Mars mission. He does give some information, but it's way too late. He should have debriefed them before this started, seeing that he's the only Martian in the crew. In the big fight of this episode, he should have been able to help massively with his previous knowledge, right? They get overran at the start because of the sheer numbers of all of them, so you can't really blame anyone, right? Wrong. Bulletproof should have been briefed on the Sackwood's hive mind and how they work. But during this fight, they had this big bubble break thanks to Eve. But he doesn't give any points or say what they should do. No, he's about as useful as a cow in a vegan dinner. So the bubble breaks and now they're back to square one. But Shapesmith actually kind of locks in at this part, getting rid of a decent amount of the Sackwoods. But when they're surrounded, he makes a barrier. He's putting in the most work I've seen this season. But he can't keep it up for long though, because they are pretty tough. That is pretty much all of it for Shapesmith so far. The only other thing is that the Martians want to kill him, and personally I'm leaving him right there, because all the problems you've just brought, if we bring you back, you're bringing more. The third problem is where I think he's no hero at all. He's actually a traitor to both Earth and the Martians, because when the original astronaut gets back home from his traumatic experience, he shockingly stumbles upon another Sackwid. Why would Shapesmith do this? This thing couldn't have hid that well. He was in this house pretty much all the time. Surely he knows what the Sackwids do. There could be no reason for him to use this as his servant. He knows that this thing is always trying to mind control living beings and create a hive mind. And he also knows that humans aren't strong enough to resist the Sackwids. By the state of his house, it could not have been a servant. But if it was hiding, surely he would have noticed this thing while looking around his newly stolen house. May I add that he gained by assaulting the original astronaut. But this is his house now. When you get a new one, you look around and you inspect all of it, because it's your house. Also, a little theory, I think that these things would leave behind some sort of goo when they move around, like snails would. So surely he would have noticed and think, maybe it's not the best idea to have this guy in here. seeing that they are literally evil. And this does have a massive consequence. Looking at season 3 finale, we saw the Sackwoods with multiple people in the sewer. Let's just hope they find the rats in New York and fight it out. My money is on whatever is in New York. In season 3, he got so much worse, not just in his fights, but something nobody else has spoken about. But first, when all the heroes in America got abducted into those eggs, and we see all of them being freed by the Reanimen, which is mostly just for a plot point. Now, what if I told you things could have been way different in this scenario? Shapesmith could have saved them. He could have shaped his fists into sharp objects and cut it open. Thinking about this now, pretty much all of the heroes could have escaped this thing. Especially Immortal, he's a lot stronger than Reanimen. Or at least the same level, seeing that he had a terrible season. But they didn't look like they were struggling to open these things either. The eggs don't look like they would be hard on the inside, making it difficult to open. Shapesmith did some average work in this fight, nothing special. With the Guardians versus the Reanimen, Shapesmith did nothing, probably because he was morally against it, and liked Cecil, especially because he said this later on.
Cecil let me live after what I did on Mars?
So that was just him picking a side. Against the nerve gun that the Mortar twins had, everybody struggled against that. But he was mostly just taken back by Darkwing's teleport. But against Powerplex was a different story, but still had problems. In this fight, I didn't expect this goofy guy to beat up the main antagonist of this episode. Plus, this treacherous dog hasn't helped at all, let alone fought to the point where he's actually making a difference. Apart from the bubble, he put in some work there. In this fight, he doesn't see that Powerplex is a threat, or see that this man is clearly distressed, and just rambles on about empathy, and not the main problem at hand. Like, bro, shut up! Don't they have, like, fighting recaps in the Guardians hideout? Because he works for the superhero squad. He should be quite trained in de-escalating these situations. Because if they do that, nobody else gets hurt. Then he explains who he is, because no one really cares about him at all. Then he goofs around and doesn't even take the fight seriously. If he did, he would have noticed that Powerplex was charging up the entire time to flame grill this guy. But surely after Shapesmith got his back blown out, Shapesmith got his get back on Powerplex. But I don't remember any fights. That's because Shapesmith only said a couple words.
Did you ever find Invincible?
This is the most work this man's ever done in the entire series, if not his entire life. Just look at his face! Absolute rage bait. Where was all this earlier? The biggest fight of the season happened not so long after this. So how did he do in the Invincible War? One of the most destructive wars with a lot of casualties. Heroes everywhere had to be sent out, but when I tell you how I felt after seeing Shapesmith's body torn in half, if I'm being honest, I was jumping around like I'd won the lottery, because I did. The hatred I have in my heart for this man is unmatched, apart from one other. But I was praising the Lord for all the blessings that he had bestowed upon me on that glorious day. But I immediately sat back down when I realised I spoke too soon when I saw him getting himself put back together, because his vital organs were not broken in this fight. But why else do I despise this character so much? Well, aside from him being useless in every fight he's ever been in, it's the damn dialogue. Why did he have to speak after what feels like any other sentence? It makes me want to watch something else. But maybe humour is subjective, and there's plenty wrong other than the jokes he makes not being funny. Just in case I'm wrong, like usual, let's look at his fight with Goatplex. I know he's not joking in this scene, but it feels like it's been set up to make it look funny. And it's not funny. Don't get me wrong, I giggled when people didn't know who he was. The joke of him being an alien has completely worn off this season, because you think he'll be trying to learn the human ways as quick as he could, so he can hide himself as a human. Because no other alien speaks like this. Take a look at the other Martian man who spoke pretty decent English somehow.
No, Nikki. You know Guardian's business is too dangerous for human children.
But he did have a lot more years to learn English properly. What about Alan the alien then? You think he'd have the most complex vocabulary ever, which is why it's ridiculous that these jokes are here. The straw that broke the camel's back for me must have been this.
And now I say something.
This show is not for kids. In the first episode, Omni-Man rips the Guardians in half. Not to mention all the blood and violence, there should not be jokes catered to children. I don't understand why the humour's put this way. The other thing that completely ruined Shapesmith for me is the same problem that has plagued the MCU for many years and ruined movie after movie, spreading like a disease. But when it first started happening in the MCU, it was fine because only the MCU did this. Now it's in other series like Devil May Cry. What is it though? They won't shut up. With characters like Dante, it makes sense because these people are not a threat to him, so he can goof around. But for Shapesmith, he is quite easily unalivable, or it's just unnecessary. It reminds me of the third Sonic movie with how many useless jokes there were.
Konnichiwa?
Like, what is that? But it made sense for that movie because it's made for kids.